If you like this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. For just $1 a month, your name can appear at the beginning of this and many other upcoming videos. When I first found out about the Rainbow Roadtrip special, I wasn't exactly sure what to make of it. It sounded like a pretty standard idea for a special and not something that really warranted an hour-long runtime. But hearing about the Toon Boom from the feature film making a comeback certainly got a lot of people's attention. There wasn't any way to know what to expect from this special, but I guess that's a good thing since it did manage to avoid getting leaked. And after watching it, I have to admit that it was actually pretty good. In fact, surprisingly good. This special ended up being a lot better than I thought it would be, considering the person who wrote it also happened to write such classics as... Yeah, let's just get to the review. Twilight and the girls travel to Hope Hollow after receiving an invitation for Rainbow Dash to appear in their festival. But when the group arrives, they notice there's something really odd about the town. All the color is missing and things seem to be pretty worn out. They eventually meet up with the mayor Sunny Skies, who explains how he might have accidentally made the color disappear when his experiment to bring the town together went wrong. To bring back the color, the others offer to help prepare the Rainbow Festival while Twilight works on reversing the effects of the gadget. But things take an interesting turn when it's discovered that maybe it wasn't the gadget that made the colors disappear. The first thing I noticed about this special is how its pacing seemed a little bit slow at first, like it seemed to be taking its time to set up the plot. But after a while the pacing starts to go faster and eventually finds an even ground. But I think this pacing decision works in the special's favor because it helps introduce the conflict when there's no real threat to overcome. It's a more laid-back type of scenario. It eases you into the plot instead of throwing a bunch of stuff at you, and the first couple of minutes after they arrive does a pretty good job framing the setup. It's a simple situation and the episode treats it as such, being calm and slow in the beginning and eventually picking up after you start to understand what's happening. It's done at a really good speed that doesn't overwhelm the viewer but doesn't leave them impatient either. And the slower pace also works in how it blends really well with the moral, about how the town needed to take their time to learn about helping with their neighbors and come together as a community. The story needed to be paced more slowly this time around because it was the kind of story that benefits from a calmer progression, taking its time to tell itself and letting the characters come to learn a lesson organically. And as much as I like high-stakes conflicts and big battles for the fate of the entire world, at least if it's done right, I also like stories with a simpler tone and a more relaxed plotline that's easier to relate to, and Rainbow Roadtrip has plenty of perks for choosing to be the latter. I really love how the episode doesn't have a villain or any dark forces going on behind the scenes. It's just a problem that needs solving. And the reason why the special works so much better without a villain is because it allows the moral to come across as stronger and more natural. It's about people coming together as a community, so having some sort of antagonistic element would have felt very out of place. There's no Deus Ex Machina, no fights to win, no friendship lasers. It's just the main six taking the time to help someone, and it helps to make the special all the more impressive. They managed to tell a well-written story with a real conflict and resolution without the need to have an antagonist. And the solution to the problem was the main six being themselves and doing their best to help the townspeople. They were spreading the magic of friendship without doing it in a way that feels forced. It's nice to just have a calmer, laid-back kind of story without the world being in peril. And it works with this kind of story as it gives you more time to spend with the cast as individuals and see the things that make them connect with each other. But the best part about the story is the moral and how it was framed. This is a really good moral. Not only is this a really good lesson to teach people, but it's also one that heavily reflects the current state of our society. With the fast-paced nature of today's culture and the lack of direct interpersonal interactions, we don't really just sit down and enjoy each other's company like we used to. It's actually reinstated by Fluttershy when she asks if the Manhattan couple ever took the time to say hello to their neighbor. It's a moral about how closing yourself off and being unfriendly with each other as a society can take away the joy from it, and how being kind and encouraging to each other can bring it back. Closing each other off was taking the colors away from the townspeople, while coming together and encouraging each other was bringing it back. That's a really smart piece of writing. The lack of color and the way that it's brought back symbolizes the closed-off state of the community, and the work that goes into bringing life back into their society. It's a surprisingly subtle and really well thought out allegory. It's a simple moral, but one that our current society needs to remember, making it much more relevant and important. It's a really good lesson for both kids and adults to learn, teaching people about goodwill and acts of kindness as a first step to understanding each other, and I'm really glad they worked it into the special without it feeling foamed in. It's definitely one of the absolute best morals in the series, and the way the story translates that moral is done really well. But enough about that, what else is there to talk about? Well, you do have the animation, and it's kind of a mixed bag. On one hand, it's nice to see this more detailed style come back, but on the other, it's pretty noticeable that they were working on a smaller budget. It's probably worth noting that this special was animated by a completely different team than DHX, which I guess would help to explain the differences. There's a couple of times where it really sticks out in an awkward way. There's points that the heads and the angles that they're animated from feel pretty off-model and distracting. It feels too stretchy and inconsistent. It could be this new animation team was getting used to the tools and aren't as familiar with it as DHX. And I guess that would explain why Spike isn't present in this special, because holy crap, he does not look like himself at all. But for all the problems the animation has, it still looks pretty cool. It manages to stay simple while feeling familiar with the original art style. And it's nice to see that they can still do funny expressions with the same level of hilarity as the original show. It may be a bit slow compared to the show, but it's also really fluid and artistic. The angles of the backgrounds are shot well, so the special has some interesting perspectives. There's also a lot of fun designs on the new ponies, particularly the ones the main six hang out with. They have really nice color patterns and accessories that really help them stand out. But what I really love about the animation is the backgrounds. Holy crap, these backgrounds are gorgeous. You can really see the detail and time that went into drawing these settings, and it makes them very captivating to look at. The valley, the open sky, the forest, the town, the inside of the buildings, the town square, it's really breathtaking. And unlike the movie, they actually do a much better job getting the ponies to fit into these backgrounds. There isn't a moment where it looks like they're running or walking in place while the camera is panning. This time it looks like they're really moving across the ground. The characters and backgrounds properly blend in this special, and it makes for a much less distracting viewing experience. Then there's the way the characters are written, and for the amount of time they had for each of these characters, they're actually pretty fun. The townspeople the main six interact with have some nice personalities, as well as some nice interests that give them something to relate to. It benefits the story as it both fits into the mission to get everyone together, and also give them an activity to bond over, so they become friends pretty easily without any of it feeling out of place. My favorite would have to be Sunny Sky. Sunny was a character that I really ended up liking more than I thought. Mayor characters are usually portrayed as incompetent or greedy or both, but Sunny is a genuinely caring mayor who takes his job with dignity. He's cheerful and funny and has a very respectable commitment to his responsibilities. Instead of turning out to be a villain, he turns out to be a really wholesome guy who's just trying to do the right thing. They take the time to show how much the community means to him, and how it fits into his family legacy. He's developed a really deep connection with the town and needed Dash's help to bring everyone together. The story finds a way to integrate his motivations with the main conflict in a way that really makes sense. And his relationship with Petunia is the most adorable thing ever. They've actually become one of my favorite couples in the series. They have some really cute interactions that don't take up too much time, so the romance doesn't distract from anything. The special also does a great job setting up their romance. There's actually several scenes showing the time they spend together and developing a bond. It's also subtly done without any dialogue, so there's a real show-don't-tell method to developing their relationship. And given the explanation for what causes the town to lose its color, it's a really cool detail that in spite of losing their color, you can still see them blushing around each other. You feel invested in the romance because the special handles it in a way that isn't distracting, and it just comes across as really sweet and wholesome. The proposal scene is really well paced, and it works as a really sweet and beautiful ending for them. It just feels so heartwarming and pure that you could almost get worked up over something like that. And aside from the new characters, the writing for the main characters is also pretty good. Even if Spike gets a minimal amount of screen time, he still comes across as a really good sport. He's willing to tend to Twilight's needs regardless of how ridiculous they are, and offers to watch over the school in her absence. He still maintains his loyalty to Twilight and doesn't complain about anything. Rainbow Dash is also pretty well written, especially when hanging out with her fans. In spite of her ego, she comes across as really helpful and encouraging, and she actually has a pretty good relationship with these two kids, being a good role model to them, keeping them encouraged, acting like the kind of pony who deserves to have fans like them. Pinkie Pie also gets some pretty good spotlight moments. Her zany attitude is handled really well, and she also gets some really funny facial reactions across. That one with her trying to inflate the balloon has such an insane amount of desperation on it, and it's hilarious. They also did a good job characterizing Fluttershy. Her interaction with the spider is a really good play on her wholehearted and unconditional love for animals. Anyone else would find the spider creepy and gross, but she shows a sense of compassion for them that others may lack. She really sees no difference between a spider and a squirrel and just wants to get along with all animals equally. Plus, her smug method of befriending the neighbors to get his apricots is such a great moment. She's really been at this for so long that sweet-talking others into getting what she wants is like second nature to her. It's so sneaky and devilish, and I really love that coming from Fluttershy. Rarity has a nice time interacting and connecting with the fashion pony, teaching her how to express herself and find her voice in design. It's pretty impressive that she manages to be so artistic and expressive without the color in her town, still finding the beauty in things when it's hard to recognize it. AJ also does a nice job job bonding with Torquench as they both relate to hard labor and encourages her by complimenting her talent in repair. In fact, this is something that I really like about the special as an improvement over the movie. Applejack and Fluttershy actually get to contribute to the plot instead of just hanging around in the background doing nothing most of the time. As for Twilight, she gets a nice central role in the episode, displaying her problem-solving skills and having a nice connection with Sunny Sky. And the best part is that none of the main six overshadow each other. They're all kept in character and their personalities work off these new characters pretty well. They all have an equal contribution to the plot, so there's a reason for them to be there instead of being forced into the episode. As a whole, the character writing in this special was really on point. The main six act like they always do, and these new characters get some nice interactions and chemistry with each other. Even if they are just one-shot appearances like characters from the movie, they still displayed some nice personalities as opposed to just being background fodder. There's a really good variety to them with their differing aesthetics and occupations, and they have a good sense of purpose in the story about communities getting together. Finally, there's the songs, to which there's only 2 of them, and I gotta say that only one of them is any good. The End of the Rainbow, sung by Sunny Sky, has a really soothing and comforting melody to it. The lyrics are nice, the narration works with the story, and it shows how the town started to drift apart over time. It's a really nice song that helps develop the story while also giving some insight into a primary character. The second song, Living in Color, feels a little bit arbitrary to me. It's the kind of closing song that you would expect, but it doesn't really do much to stand out. It has a pretty standard rhythm, and the lyrics really aren't as grasping as the ones from the first song. It does have some nice visuals, but it doesn't have that same finesse as a lot of other songs. It's pretty average and sort of gimmicky to say the least. There is one other detail that I liked about the special, and that's how they don't actually draw any attention to the fashion pony's amputated leg. Instead of making a big deal out of it or having one of the characters ask about it, they just react normally and don't try to make it into an issue. It's actually an appropriate attitude to have towards someone with prosthetics. You really shouldn't ask about it if it's going to make them uncomfortable, and you should only give them help if they're asking for it. It's also a pretty good way to insert diversity into the episode without introducing any new creatures or bringing back any old ones. So with all that said, Rainbow Roadtrip was a really good TV special. I'd even go so far as to say that it was even better than the movie. The simpler plotline and lesson for kids was a really good break from the bigger and more complex storylines from previous seasons. The humor is well thought out, the new characters are fun, and it also displays the best qualities of each of the main six. The story is simple but also really wholesome and natural, and it manages to have a real conflict without the need to introduce an antagonist. And considering MLP's usual formula, this special came across as a lot less predictable than what you'd normally expect from the series. It's very wholesome and adorable, and the moral about communities getting along was very well executed. As a slice of life story, it gives the audience more time to just focus on cute characters, fun music, and a handful of laughs. This special manages to encapsulate everything that Friendship is Magic is about. A good story underlying a good message. It's definitely a special that I look forward to seeing again sometime soon. So until next time, take care of yourselves and stay awesome. This is Map signing out.